everyone. It's Justin Bell here on Drive To Win at the Sirius XM studios at the Wynn Las Vegas. And of course, the show is brought to you by Mobile One for the love of driving. Yep, you have been watching us recently on YouTube. I appreciate that. But also, the numbers are growing over there on the Sirius XM ESPN Extra Channel 81. And thank you, everybody, for following along on demand, too. Just so many more ways to catch this show. And I'm very proud of it. Well, let's just say, what a race. There was more overtaking on the first lap than anything in the entire Japanese Grand Prix last weekend. So I knew from the start that I better start taking my notes because this was out to get exciting. Of course, why is that? Well, there was strategy, there was pace, there was great racing all the way up and down the grid. I mean, it really does help. I mean, that's where Drive to Survive has really helped because, you know, everybody has a story to tell. Everybody has their own battle, either internal or external, with their teammate against the next guy on the grid. And it makes for such good racing. I think even for someone like me who has been watching racing my whole life, as well as being involved, it does help you process the fact that and appreciate everybody has got their own race going on. It was great racing, as I say, all the way down the grid. And the common denominator, I said it last week, I think is tyre degradation. It is the missing element when the races aren't happening like that. So anyway, we'll get into that a little bit later with my guest, Stefan Johansson. He's joining us back on the show. He's been on before. A super great guy, and I can't wait to get his take on what happened over the weekend. Well, as you know, if you listen to this show, McLaren were 1 and 2. It was a Piastri domination, and I really enjoyed watching it. It was a domination from pole all the way to win, and just how good was that? Well, I think we're starting to see the strengths of his personality coming through in his on-track performance. You know, we did think there were gaps in it when he was showing his pace, but really his inexperience was the thing that was rubbing off, affecting him with some of the potential top results. But he is just storming towards a performance level that I think anyone around him must have already known years ago. It's only his second, 2 prior years in Formula One, and he's had 2 pole to victory races. Because he hits the grid, doesn't he, guys? He hits the grid believing he can win. And that is a mindset that I'm not sure I ever had, to be honest. But all those top guys have it. There's no discrepancy. There's no doubt. And you can see it all the way through, whether it's his attitude in his interviews. I mean, he's courteous. He's polite. He gives just what he needs to. When he has a bad result, he's accepting of it, and he just goes, yeah, well, we'll learn from that. And when it's a great race and he's won, I mean, it's kind of the same reaction, just with a little bit more of a yippee involved. And I think that while it might not make for great social media sound bites, I think it really does help him with his ability to crack on in Formula One. And there's something about the way he communicates on the radio as well to his engineer. It's just always ice cold, even in the middle of a fight scrap with another driver. So I think it's fantastic. There's something also about, I call it like your internal bandwidth. When you have a level of experience and talent in any sport, I think it gives you time. It gives you bandwidth. And he has a quietness in his head that gives him more room to be able to handle the big issues. And, when it's going bad, it gives you that ability to find the inner strength. When it's going well, you just know how to capitalize on it. And you combine the two, and I think we're seeing the net result. I'm interested to ask Stefan, about the management of a guy like him, because obviously, when you have a guy that's a cerebral driver, does that take a certain type of preparation? I don't know. I wasn't one. So 3 points between Lando and Oscar as they come out of that weekend. And Lando, in contrast, is just so much more emotional. And he acknowledges the pitfalls and his occasional struggle with mental health issues. And, by that, I don't mean, he has any demons in his baggage, but he just is so self-aware of his potential and his pitfalls and what it takes for him personally to be a fast driver compared to the others. And he's got to realize that everybody else believes in him, his family, the team, Zach Brown, but he just equally has to be able to process that and come in every week strong enough. And it's so easy to say, but these outpourings that he has, I'm clueless, I shouldn't even drive a car, I've never driven before, they're internal thoughts that I do believe every driver in their own way might have. Max, Oscar, far less, but you have them and you put them in a little box and you lock them away on race day. You have to, as you can't race. For me, it was being an artist, actually, and it just didn't work out with being a racing driver. Had to lock it away. And every athlete feels this. I love the aspect, but he's got to find a way to process it and hide it. But when he goes into attack mode, boy, I love it. I love his flamboyance and his style. And if I was a mate of his, I think we get on pretty well, pretty similar personalities, I would say, embrace your flamboyant side, embrace your boyish nature. You do not need to be like one of those guys that is cold and emotionless, like a Kimi Räikkönen. Beat them with the power of your magical personality. And I think if Lando is able to really channel that and realize that's his strength, not his kryptonite, don't try and be like an Oscar or a Max, then I think Lando can be totally content. Go into battle with the tools you have, you know? So anyway, he's got to find his teammate's weak spot and then rattle him. Everyone has it, don't they? A weak spot? I'm not sure. Anyway, two different ways to get to the same result. Talk about a different approach. I'm going to call him the sleeper from now on. George Russell. He is fast without doubt. He has this smiley British gentleman vibe. I used to think maybe too nice. Absolutely not, right? He is a thrilling killer in his own way. And we have seen this tough side come out. The tough side that he had in conflict with Max Verstappen last year, didn't back down, said, that's the way I'm going to race him. He needs to be like that. And it was a crazy race. He had to manage his tires for the last 24 laps. He had brake issues, dash issues, DRS issues. The radio chatter was busy. He had, everything going wrong he could, and he still held on to a great podium finish. And he really has stepped up as the lead driver of that team. Especially he's handling it right. He's got a rookie that's coming in that is acknowledged as maybe the next big thing, the next Max Verstappen-ish kind of driver. And the only way to do it is give him all the support you can, but dominate him, crush him all the way you can while you have the opportunity, because it won't be there for long. So it does show that experience is key in Formula One. Well, it's that time of year again to get your plans in order to attend the 2025 Concourse right here at the Wynn Las Vegas. This year's event is a weekend-long celebration that promises to be the social event of the fall season, where the world's most beautiful cars and the top automakers will grace the greens of the Wynn Golf Club for the Wynn Las Vegas Concourse. The fourth annual gathering features an expanded showcase of more than 250 unique cars within 4 judged and non-judged pillars for vehicle entry and display. The event will take place from October 31st through November 2nd. And if you want more information regarding tickets and room packages, you can visit lasvegasconcourse.com. Well, so much to talk about, guys. Let's bring on our guest, Stefan Johansson. He had 10 years in Formula One, 79 starts, 12 podiums, with pretty much every team that was on the Formula One grid, it appeared, but especially the highlights being McLaren and Ferrari, so he knows how it works over there. And he also won the Le Mans 24 Hours in 1997, the same year that I did, in a different class. He's a world-renowned artist and just one of those guys. Stefan, great to have you back on the show, my friend. How are you today?
I'm great. Very good, thanks.
That's good. Yeah, as we were just saying, it's been a while since I've seen you. I mean, I've seen you at events and things, and obviously on social media. Before we talk about the race in Bahrain, what is all this SJ87 road car stuff I've been seeing you promote with O'Gara? That looks wild.
Yeah, it was a great project. Really fun project. They approached me about, it's a little bit over 2 years ago now, actually. With Dean Lansanti built this very unique Porsche 911. There was he found out that there was 11 of the tag turbo F1 engines sitting in a shed somewhere in England, and approached Zach, I guess, to see if we could buy these engines and then do a retrofit into this period 911 from the 80s. So that's what happened. And then each car had the actual engine that was raced in F1 by the various drivers who drove for McLaren in that period. So there's like the AP 85, NL 86, Niki Lauda, Alan Prost, I think John Watson, Keke, and myself was the drivers. And so mine then was the SJ 87. And it's the engine I used at the Austrian Grand Prix in 87. So, which is totally unique, of course, already. And then O'Gara approached me because we knew each other before anyway, and asked if I wanted to, because they knew I'm now an artist, and asked if I wanted to paint the car. And I thought, yeah, great. That sounds a fabulous project. So we did. And so that just added another layer of complete, total uniqueness that could never be repeated, I don't think, because I don't think there's another F1 driver
that paints like you. No.
And secondly, that's actually raced the car with the engine that's in the car that I painted, so it's a super unique project.
Yeah, it looks so good. Also, as an artist, I mean, I love your work, and I see it on social the whole time. I've seen the big scale things. I know you're at the Peterson, you're doing something there. But what's it like when you transfer your medium, you transfer your art to a different medium? Because it must come alive on a car, right? It's three-dimensional. You've got curves, you've got hips. That must have been so fun.
It was a great project, really was, and Dean is he's an artist in his own right, him and his team, and how we sort of just evolved into what we ended up doing, and the way we did it was just a great collaboration. I had my vision in my head and how to do it, and then they just kind of realized it, in a really, the workmanship was just fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, how fun. Well, it's always fun to see everything evolve. So, well, let's dive back into the weekend. I know you follow the racing so closely, obviously. I thought, thank God, after Japan, we're back, right? There was tons of overtaking, everything happening. But I want to sort of start it off with, there you have Piastri and Charles Leclerc on the front row. I think for the people sitting at home and people that watch F1 TV and Drive to Survive and everything, and we talk about going for pole position, and you hear all the commentators, even DC, describing why it's important, but we don't often hear about what it takes to do. Put yourself back, a few decades. When you're trying to qualify a Formula One car, what is the state of mind? What do you have to elevate about your performance to be faster than anyone else?
Yeah, it's really just piecing it all together in that one lap where, you can't afford any small mistake or, just being that, or down, sit on the edge of that razor blade, if you off the edge a little bit, you're about 0.2 off maybe. If you push a bit harder and you go over that edge, you're probably half a second slower, because it takes more to recover the car and to kind of catch it, and you have to back out a little bit, and before you, so it's such a fine line, and it really, as complicated and complex as the cars are today, it's obviously a really strong collaboration between your engineer and everything else, to get to that point. But the trick really today, I think, just comes down to tires. How you get the tires into that perfect operating range just for that one lap. And then you have of course, races. It's a whole different story when it comes to tire management. But just for that qualifying lap, it's just so crucial to, and you can see, because like even Verstappen, when the car is not in the operating window, the car is almost impossible to drive.
Yeah.
You look, of course, the other thing now is that the grid is insanely close. It's even closer than IndyCar now. I mean, you got the whole field covered by a second.
Yeah, I mean,
Crazy.
2/10. You make that mistake for 2/10 and you're sixth, right?
Yeah,
Look at
exactly.
Lando, back
Which used
there.
to be maybe one grid position before, you know.
It's actually, it is outrageous. But the other thing, as we saw last weekend with Max in his qualifying lap at Suzuka, they can do all their predictions, all that AI computing power, and they have all these technological partners, and they have so much data, and they can predict pretty much where the car's going to be. But what you can't add in there is that magical factor of a driver who just transitions what he was doing the rest of the weekend. And as you say, the tires come in, your confidence is up, your ability to drown everything else out is in your hands, because they can't predict the magic factor of a driver, can they?
No, I mean, it's rare to, I mean, it's beautiful to see it happen, when you see that something really extraordinary is going down here, and Max is exceptional, of course, now. I mean, he's just getting better and better every year. And I think now he's really just, I mean, he's in his own league at the moment, I think.
Yeah.
But having said that, it's still, I mean, the next weekend, he couldn't get the car into that range. And, subsequently he's seventh, So, I mean, it's just one of those things. Even if you're the best in the world, if the car, you got to have the car underneath you, to be able to do that, and that's really what it comes down to. And kind of ironically, in a way, the way it is today, it always comes down to the tires.
Yeah.
Which, in a way, is ridiculous, because it shouldn't be a factor. It shouldn't. I mean, the operating window is so narrow. And if you can get into that window, I think that's where the strength of the McLaren is personally. It's more that than the car itself. It's just they figured out how to make the tires work in a lot, in a much broader sense than everybody else can.
Yeah. And last year, if you remember, when if we talked about Piastri a year and the year before, it was the fact that he didn't know how to make the most of the tires in qualifying. Yeah. And it was like only a matter of time. The kid is great. We'll talk about him in a minute a bit deeper. But Gasly starting fourth. I mean, just hearing those words come out of my mouth, that's spectacular.
Yeah. Same thing again, I mean, that this weekend, whatever conditions with the tarmac, with this and that, obviously car is not different from the last weekend. You're not going to make a car jump 10 grid spots
no.
from one weekend to the next. So it's the circumstances of the track, the this, the that, to just suit. And because it's so close as it is, you don't need a huge improvement to gain 10 grid places now. That's the thing.
But isn't that right, Stefan? Every driver and every team and every mechanic, everybody that walks in the paddock on a Friday and then Saturday, Sunday, believes this is their weekend in whatever way that is. And it's hard, unless you're a competitor, you don't really appreciate that. But everybody believes they're going to be able to pull it out that weekend. The weekend can hammer you over the course of those 72
you
hours.
You have to be like that, don't you? I mean, if you just got to believe that you're the best all the time, that's and it's a good state of mind to be in, I mean, it's part of it.
But it's pretty easy to be knocked off that, sidetracked from that, as we've seen. So, I mean, I know you haven't driven a modern Formula One car, but you still remember from your day, I know the sides were a bit lower. You had visibility on those front tires, but it was still bloody hard to see the white line to stop for your grid box, wasn't it? Even back then.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is all the time with any car, really, because you don't see that line when whether you're in a sports car, F1 car, whatever it is, So, I mean, and the fact that, I mean, how much was it? A couple of inches?
Yeah. So, I'm obviously talking about Lando pulling short and then going forward.
Mac caught it immediately.
Yeah, wasn't that hysterical? There he is. He's like, Lando's ahead of his box. It's like, I swear he can tell everything that's going on around him. He's got so much bandwidth.
He's amazing. I mean, his ability to he's got so much in reserve mentally aside from driving the car, which is always a sign of a great driver anyway.
Yeah. It's so Lando, he stops short. He then drives himself forward, overshoots it. I mean, his start was still bloody great, and he got himself up to third. Obviously, got a 5-second penalty for that. So much great overtaking on that first lap or two. More than the whole Japanese Grand Prix. I mean, you had Antonelli on Sainz, and then Hamilton on Sainz, and then Yuki went by, and then Antonelli on Gasly again. Another great overtake. Last week, Stefan, I drilled down onto the subject that Autosport also had picked up, which is what was the variable that made the racing so bloody dull in Bahrain, in Japan, and it really got down to the tire degradation, which, as you just said, it's kind of ridiculous we have to think about tires so much, but it does introduce a variable that really allows for this great strategy and this great racing. And it was back this weekend, and we had great racing. I think tire deg might, unfortunately, be the missing element.
Yeah, but I think Suzuka has always been incredibly difficult to pass on because it's just the nature of the track. It's just got long, sort of medium speed, flowing corners. There's no real straight where you can come out of the corner before and get, maybe if you have a little bit better traction or whatever, and get up alongside for the braking, because it just flows. There's only one line, the whole track really. And I always say, it sounds boring, but the best corners for overtaking is just a straightforward 90-degree corner, like you have on many street circuits, because you can either do, try the pass on the entry, or you can fake it, and then you get them on the exit. So opens up the door for a lot of, defense, offense, and if you get a little bit better traction or have a little bit better braking, there's many opportunities you can pass that way.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, yes, DRS gives you that amazing advantage, but if you're only going from 200 down to 150 for the first right-hander there at Suzuka, I mean, you're not really opening much of a delta, are you?
No, that's what I mean. It's just, and the way the cars are today, they're so, the grip is just insane. So they're almost in the corner when you start braking. So, forget trying to pass going into the turn one. It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's just one line, and because you already, you literally start turning before you brake.
Yeah. You think back to the way you used to drive a Formula One car, or any of the cars, the sports cars that we both drove. It wasn't quite traditional in the fact that you teach at racing school, brake in a straight line and shift and things. But we definitely got the business out of the way before we were carrying momentum into the corner, right? Now, you watch these guys on the in-car, because of the speed of their gearboxes, because of the downforce and the tire grip, they're up and down like a fiddler's hands, through the corners. It's unbelievable. A way that you could not have driven a McLaren back in your day, right? Wildly different. And they drive like that on the sim too. Yeah,
absolutely. I remember first, I did a lot of the original testing actually for McLaren with the paddle shift. Which was interesting at the time when it suddenly decided to shift down from 6th to 4th through the 130R at Suzuka, for example. We were testing there,
So that's when you come in, the engineer says, what's your problem with that? You go, you get in and do it.
But I think the whole, manual shifting was such a huge skill element. It was like one of the biggest tools in your arsenal to go faster or slower, because the shifting was difficult, especially when we had the 1500 horsepower turbo engines, like in Monaco, for example. You could not shift quick enough. Going up that hill there, wheel spin in every gear, and you just kept feeding it, and then of course the downshift was equally important, because if you got a little bit wrong and you lock up the rear, because so it was a lot of rhythm and a lot of feel involved in all that, and I remember I spent days at the factory at Ferrari, me personally, because I could visualize how the forks and everything, to try to filing off the forks to just get from second to third up without even thinking about it, just automatic like this, and it was all these things you don't even
Don't even think about it. And in the wet, balancing it. I mean, 1,500 horsepower around Monaco, manual shift, that would have put lead in your pencil, wouldn't it? That was no Viagra needed there.
Car. I mean, it was, I remember it was, it was totally insane, but we were doing 350 Ks before braking after the tunnel going into the chicane with the qualifying tires and full boost.
Jesus. That's something else, isn't it?
Crazy.
Yeah, that's wild. Well, let's talk about, as the race gets on, obviously, you had Leclerc arguing on tyre strategy and they ignore it. And, I think it is interesting to see drivers, again, that driver factor, they've decided on whichever letter of the alphabet they're going to go with, right, on their strategy at Ferrari. But all the teams, they've made a plan. Can they go one stop? Can they go two stop? That driver input, though, that's not to be dismissed, is it? When they're there in the heat of battle, but equally, the team have all the data. They have the bigger picture. So for a driver to insist, no, I'm going to do something, they ignored him, obviously. I'm happy that the drivers still have that degree of input from the steering wheel.
Yeah, I think it's still important as well, because the driver is the guy in the car. He can feel what's going on. He can see everything. It's one thing. We've seen it hundreds of times, right, amongst all the teams, how they get it wrong by just looking at the data. And sometimes, you have maybe 2 seconds to make that decision, with weather conditions and what have you. So I think the driver input is really important. And if you remember, Michael Schumacher used to be brilliant at that when he just said, no, I'm coming in now, or the other way around, whatever it was, because he could see, he could sense everything. And so I think that's still very crucial.
And you see some guys are better at, I like Carlos Sainz on that one too.
Exactly. Carlos is pretty, he really thinks it through well, I think.
Yeah, I think he does. It's a strength. Obviously now in Williams' bucket. Let's talk about Antonelli, because watching him pass Max was just fantastic. He positions the car so well. What do you see when you watch him race? You're a driver manager. What do you see when you see a young Kimi out there?
No, he's a mega talent, obviously. I think he's going to be, that new crop that's just come in now, I think are all extremely talented, The level of F1 today, I think, is probably the best it's ever been in terms of driver talent, because they start so young and they have all, simulators. They have a lot of tools to play with, So, they can just get an enormous amount of seat time, although maybe not in a rear car, but nevertheless, it's still just driving, a lot of driving. We obviously in our day, you had to go testing. Which I think would still be a good element if they allowed teams to do more testing. Because the one thing that kind of puzzles me is that how often the teams get it completely wrong with the new updates.
Yeah.
But you think, with all the simulators, they have the CFD, they have wind tunnels, they have all this, and they get it totally wrong more often than they get it right, it seems like.
Yeah.
And obviously that, back in I remember with Ferrari, we used to pound around Fiorano testing like 30 different rear wings, in one day. And I remember sometimes, Tomaini, my engineer, he sort of leans into the cockpit and put a new wing on, say, pay attention, the first 3 laps, okay? Which meant they had absolutely no idea what this one was going to do.
Yeah, it's going to work, I think. You just push, Stefan. You'll be fine.
Well, having said that, this is 40 years ago now.
I know.
It really blows my mind how they can't predict that enough in the tunnel to know that this is going to be this is going to give you 5% more downforce or this or that, whatever the goal is to achieve with what they're doing.
Yeah. But you think back to, I don't want anyone listening to think this is just two old men reminiscing, but you talk to a young driver now, like I know you do, and the concept of going to a new track in Formula One, like you did your first season, where you've never seen it before, as a Ferrari driver, or certainly when you started in Formula One, you've never seen the track before. You walk around it or you run around it, and then you go out for practice. I mean, the level of preparation was dire compared to these days. These days, the kids know where the banners are, the paints are. No, that's why they're better than us.
Yeah, well, it's part of it, of course, because training makes you good, right? No matter what you do, the more you train, the more you practice, the better you get. So I think that's why the level is extremely high on all the guys now. The only thing that they can't train and be good at is racecraft, and that's what really the component that makes the difference today.
But that's where their 1,000 karting races come in, right? You see the way they race. Their close proximity, they had a great stuff when they do the recap on the race on F1 TV. I just went and watched it again this morning, and they're looking out the back of the car. You know, they can, because so many camera angles, they can compile a great montage. And they're so close, and they're in and out of each other, and it's just that spatial awareness that you get from thousands of races. So, they don't have it in Formula One, but they do have it.
Yeah,
they have it in their database.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, like Max and Leclerc have been racing each other since they were 5 years old.
I know. Isn't that wild?
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
There's some really cute, I don't know if you've seen those really cute videos.
Max is here.
When they were like 6 or something, you know, and
But also Leclerc's like this big, right? It's like Lando and George. They're like little and large. Very, very cute. Something that I was thinking about is, like, again, back with Antonelli, he's driving better in Formula One than actually he did last year in F2, ironically. Some drivers, it's like in every sport, you see it when they might not be the first draft or the first pick or whatever in baseball and football, and then they get to the big time and they actually star. You're seeing it with Antonelli. I think he's actually listening and responding to their instructions, and he obviously suits driving a modern-day Formula One car.
I mean, the unfortunate, unfair thing really with motorsport in general is that the higher up the ladder you go, the car just becomes easier and easier and easier. I mean, an F1 car is so unbelievably sophisticated, the engineering. And most of it is, in fact, done that way to make the driver's life easier, right? I mean, everything responds if you go from an F1 car to an F3 car, for example, I mean, you'd be miles off.
Interesting.
Seconds off, before you get the hang of it again.
Whoa. I mean, just look at the stress on their hands on the wheel. There's no way you could have one hand doing all those adjustments on the cars you drove with no power steering. There's no way. You'll be clinging on for dear bloody life. Yeah,
absolutely.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because even like Berman, Antonelli, all the guys that's really, really showing good in F1 now, we're nowhere in F2.
No.
But F2 is a tricky formula because there's always one team that finds the magic bullet. That one thing that gives you that extra couple of tenths, and then whoever drives that car is going to look good, But I mean, it's like a graveyard, the F2, isn't it? The amount of F2 championship winners that basically their career just stopped right there.
Yeah.
And they never went any further.
Yeah. All that money and all that dedication.
Yeah.
And, then you're selling insurance.
Well, you got to be with the right program today in F1. That's the problem, isn't it? If you're with the Mercedes program or Red Bull or McLaren or whatever, then it's almost impossible to be independent today. I mean, you're not going to get anywhere.
No,
right?
you got to be in the ladder. Well, let's talk Red Bull. Obviously not a great weekend. I mean, what a difference a week makes from maybe arguably one of Max Verstappen's best drives last week. He had a slow pit stop. He was back at last place. I know the lights were an issue. The strategy was an issue. He had a brake issue. Just the question is, how does his winning championship, viciously competitive mind deal with running around in 5th, 6th, 7th place?
I think it's, you just adapt all the time. I mean, he's dealing with, the circumstances he's in now. He's still doing the best he can, obviously, and probably carrying that car on his back, most of the time. So I don't think it's anything different, really. I mean, it's tougher, obviously, when you're in the middle of the pack, rather than starting from the front where you have clean air and, racing against guys, and so on, so it's a lot of those things. But, every guy out there is ultra competitive. It's just, you just deal with the circumstances as they come along. And often in races, even let's say halfway through a race, circumstances change, weather conditions, whatever. You just have to adapt. You have to improvise all the time. It looks, when you watch on TV, it looks monotonous, but never, that, Justin.
Yeah.
One lap is never the same as the last one.
No.
And no corner is the same as the last time. It's always little things, that changes. The tire goes off a bit, the heat goes up, there's gravel, there's always something, right?
Yeah, there always is.
You just have to always kind of feel that and improvise a lot, accordingly.
Well, obviously there is that apparent clause in his contract, a performance clause, if they drop him out of a certain position in the championship, because he's not worried about his own abilities after all these 4 world championships. It's the car. It was reported with glee and enthusiasm by the media when they saw Max's manager confronting Helmut Marko from Red Bull after the race. I don't know if you've had to be in that position as a manager, but it's a pretty public display of dissatisfaction. What do you reckon was said?
Yeah, I think obviously there's tensions there. And clearly they're probably boiling over a little bit, especially with everything that went down. And I don't know the ins and outs of the team, but obviously it's it's been a tough sort of mid-season last year until now. Things haven't been going what they used to, maybe. So, but next weekend it'll be a different story again. That's the thing. I think also the media is just still. F1 in general. It was always bad, but now I think the media is just so sensationalist all the time. Lando now is finished basically. It's like his career's over if you read the press. He's had one bad race. He's still leading the championship. He couldn't quite put it together the last weekend, but he's what? Come on. It's ridiculous,
It is so reactive, and it's such a statement on our time of social media, headlines, clickbait. Lando wears his heart on his sleeve, doesn't he? He is maybe too honest about the way he's feeling. But I was playing pickleball the other day, kept on hitting the ball in the net. I'd never played it before, and I was just, my girlfriend was like, you don't need to put yourself down so much. I'm like, I'm a piece of crap at this. Should never hold a racket in my life. I should just go home. Now, we've all felt like that behind the wheel, haven't we, Stefan? When you get out going, this is just a crap weekend and I'm crap.
Well, that's the thing. I'm sure it's the same for you. You have a bad weekend, or you have you crash and it's your fault, or whatever, you spin, or whatever happens. The video just keeps playing, doesn't it?
Yeah. Until the next week.
Over it. But I think the good thing with that is, as long as, most of the time you learn from whatever mistake you made, you come back a bit stronger the next time and, charged up and ready to prove it to yourself more than anything else that, that's not going to happen again.
No.
One thing, when you mentioned that with Lando, for example, I think it's quite refreshing, the current crop of drivers, their honesty. I really appreciate that. They're not afraid of admitting that they screwed up, or made a mistake or had a bad. Nigel. Yeah, better kill that off.
That's Max. That's Max's manager.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Nigel Mansell never admitted, a mistake. Ayrton, you name it, you can, a whole lot, It's like, it was always something. Always something or someone, who caused whatever happened.
Yeah, but these guys, you're right. They live in a very transparent, visible world where there is no hiding of what they do. It's unbelievable the way that their lives are laid out like that. So no wonder they want personal time away from it. I think writing Lando off at this stage of the season is a bit... Look at last year. My producer, Gemma, and I were just talking about it. At the beginning of the year, would he have said Ferrari were going to be where they were at the end of the year? You've got Mercedes George is right up there. Another great result. Let's talk about that. I think he's doing a great job stepping up as team leader, George Russell.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. I mean, he's clearly incredibly talented. I mean, he, immediately gave Lewis a really strong run for his money, when he came into the team, and he sort of developed from there. But yeah, I mean, George is definitely a world champion contender, like a lot of them up front are now.
Yeah.
Just when he gets the right car and all the things go together, he can win a championship for sure. He's already shown that, I think, with the way he manages the races. He's very aware of the car and the circumstances all the time as well. And if you listen to the radio, he very often debates the engineers or suggests things to the engineers.
Yeah.
Actually, probably more than anyone else on the radio, at least, that we can hear.
Yeah, he loves community. He is very honest. He loves the communication. And also he's got that British sense of humor. I mean, he and Lando both do. But he's like, he's about to lose the dash. They're driving it. Basically, the wheels are falling off the car, and this is what he said on his message. He was like, well, as long as the wheels don't fall off, mate. He's humorous. He's right there. He obviously, like we said, he has enough bandwidth in his performance for those extra things. And that comes with that bit of experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's going to do really well. Obviously, then Norris gets by, strong overtake. We're getting towards the end of the race here. I mean, Russell has got a plethora of issues going on. It looks good. Is Lando going to catch up and all that? No, but, Piastri wins his fourth race. Good for Zach, obviously, right there in their home race, in a way, with a second home, with the team being owned by the Bahrainis. Let's talk Oscar Piastri for a minute again. Obviously, he is such a sublime talent. Doesn't necessarily mean he's better than a Lando, but he has a totally different skill set and operating window. For you, what as a driver manager who watches this stuff, what makes him so special?
Well, I think it's a combination of, he's obviously an extreme talent. He showed that already in junior categories, that this guy's the real deal, and everybody that's been watching could certainly agree with that. I think his strength, which maybe makes him a bit special, is just his mental game. I think he's incredibly strong mentally. I think, and he's got that sort of ruthless edge to him, which I think you need in the end. Especially if it comes down to getting your elbows out to win a championship, I think he could certainly match Max any day when it comes down.
And Yuki was a solid race up there in the points as well. Talk about just the demands that it would have in that second seat. Obviously we know Liam's out, Yuki's in. Looks like there's a lot of support for him to stay in that seat. What is the approach you have to have? And it actually kind of applies to Hamilton as well. When you go to a big established team and you move from one team to the other. Actually, let's jump to Lewis. What do you think Lewis is really dealing with? You walked through the gates there, those red gates. What do you think he's really having to face?
Well, Ferrari is unique in many ways like that because, there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of I don't know what the politics is like now because, of course, it's a totally different setup from when I was there, but it's always there brewing, so there's a lot of that, obviously. But I think in Lewis' case, that, he's very capable of handling all that. I think it's more the way, although the cars, if you took every single car and painted them white and put them next to each other, I don't think you could tell the difference because they all look exactly the same now. Yeah. But they're all uniquely different in their philosophy. You can see that even with simple things like the steering wheels, and because the complexity of the cars is just crazy.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can see this with Carlos, the same thing. He has to relearn everything he knew at Ferrari to drive the Williams, and I think Lewis now coming from Mercedes to the Ferrari, has have to do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with not even half a second which is catastrophic difference in grid positions and everything, then it's really just polishing that diamond every single day, to get 0.25% better, 0.5% better here. But you're talking about nuances all the time, but nuances that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
I think one of the big issues now is the braking, and with the hybrid and everything, and there's just so many different components that you have to face, and it just takes that little time. And and this was you can't translate that from the simulator or whatever. Just you need to drive the car to really understand that, And had it been like back in the day, or even like when Schumacher was there, when you could go testing, you figure that out in 4-5 test days.
Yeah.
Because you can drive all day and you can do all this stuff. But now, you just get literally straight to the next race. There's no time to drive the car and really feel those little things, like you were able to do before. And those problems would have been solved in maximum 5 days of testing. You would have been right with the program and all that.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because I also think that extends to the communication between you, your engineer, your crew chief, and everybody. Because in the testing, you're going to be getting some of that kind of bull out of the way, aren't you? Whereas they're really only talking properly on the radio for the first time about some of this stuff and these eventualities in the race. So no wonder Lewis is going, what are you talking about? I want to do it this way. So a lot more than just a language barrier, a lot more than just the car. Yeah. It's interesting. Well, it was a great race, fun to watch, but obviously we go into Jeddah, Saudi Arabia this weekend. It's another night race on the streets, and it's just super fast track, especially for a temporary street track, since 2021. Last year it was Max, Perez, and then Charles Leclerc. What's your prediction? Well, I'm in Vegas, but there's no way to make a prediction for this weekend. What would yours be if you could?
Well, what you said, it's almost impossible now, because every weekend it's someone else, but the only one who's consistently up top is McLaren. So we would have to assume that McLaren's going to be right there. But for the rest, I think it's a crapshoot. It could be anyone, really.
Yeah.
You just never know. Whoever gets it right in the day, and whoever makes the tires work will be good.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down.
Isn't that wild? And you've got to have that.
It's already cheap. The tires are probably the cheapest component on the entire car.
Yeah.
Literally. And it's the one, because there's 4 things that make a race car go fast, right? It's the chassis, the engine, the driver, and the tires.
And the biggest variable right now.
There's nothing you can do about the tires. It's, you get given, and then you have to figure it out around that.
Yeah. Well,
the tire is ultra, with such a small window, which I don't understand. If it was say, made it 2 seconds a lap slower and open up the window so that everybody can at least latch on to the setup they need, then it would be a different story.
Yeah. I guess the argument against that is we're having some amazing racing, and you can't put a finger on who's going to be, especially going for the drivers' championship. I think McLaren will probably do the constructors already, but when it comes to drivers, I don't know. It's don't rule anyone out all the way through.
No, really. And even with the constructors, Red Bull last year at this point were totally dominant, right? No one got a look in. Max just cleaned up every race. First 5 races, I think, or 6, whatever it was. And then suddenly they're nowhere. Yeah. Or not nowhere, but they were struggling from then on. And so, if you're talking about less than 2 tenths, really, from, pole to 3rd, 4th, or 5th now. Yeah. So it could change overnight, literally.
Yeah. Well,
if one team gets whatever update they do, and then they're going to be the teams to be.
Yeah. Well, the odds in Vegas have just put Oscar and Lando kind of on equal footing for the Drivers' Championship, and Max has dropped off the face. There are some people in this room who have got big bets on Max, but we'll see. No, not this year. Not this year, he says. He's going with Lando. He might lose that. Anyway, well, listen, Stefan, thanks so much, mate. It's really great. I don't know where else to see you. Are you going to go to Luft? Are you going to go to Air and Water? Are you going to Luft?
No, I'm leaving. I'm flying back to Europe tomorrow.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'll be over there now till Indy 500.
Okay. All right. Well, might see you there. Well, thank you very much for joining the show. And of course, thank you very much to Mobil 1 for the love of driving. As always, a great partner. And if you enjoyed the race this weekend and you want to hear what we have to say about it coming up next week, remember we are on SiriusXM ESPN Extra Channel 81, and if you just want to catch us on demand, it is on their SiriusXM app. Thank you, of course, to the Wynn Las Vegas for their gracious, beautiful hospitality, and to my whole production crew. I will see you next week. Take care, guys.